an outfit, sometimes you see that a portion of the outfit, there is some kind of design that has been decorated somewhere. If you watch, especially with the women, you notice that they have what we call the sequence that have been displayed maybe in a particular location of the garments that they put on. And those location that has been emphasized with those sequence or buttons or maybe a particular color of fabric or maybe embroidery or something, those areas are known to be the emphasis. So in design, emphasis is very important. An area that catches the eye from the first, glance. Okay. And it's an area that's supposed to have a certain, pull of the person who is the onlooker. And in design, you need to have that. You need to have something that if you go to Malcolm and you see a particular design, maybe it's a microwave, maybe it's what do you call it, air fryer or whatever. You see sometimes even the display buttons on the surface, the LED screen that you see, all of those is there are ways that they projected them, the way they are, molded, and even the form, the handles, the shape of the item, the products, all of these things add to emphasis. They lift your eye and you are pulled to it. And once you are pulled to it, you see, you become so interested to the extent that you want to have it in your home. The same thing applies to car. When you look at cars, when they are parked or they are moving, you see the front, the way the headlamps are, the way the grills, the way the bumpers are designed. They are designed specifically by way of emphasizing certain parts of these cars so that it attracts, pulls your interest closer. So emphasis is an area that you need to also consider when you're putting together a design. The shoes we wear, you see that some parts they've added certain maybe golden, blemish somewhere. They put something red, something there, something. Always there's something known as emphasis in most designs that we see. So the elements that you are going to actually use to emphasize your work is very key. And it could be color, it could be shape, it could be line, it could be anything at all that is within the elements that you wish to emphasize in your work. Okay. So a typical example is what I put together here below the text, that you see that the emphasis is on the square behind, where a lot of lines have been shaded on it to make it more solid and make it more bold and appear and in terms of its appearance. And the other ones have been left transparent. They look so transparent, so flat, okay, and they look so light. But the square at the far end or at the receiving end is much more pulled closer to the beholder. And so that is what we're talking about. And I give you a typical example in garment designs, how a lot of emphasis are made. Even when you wear some of these the kaftan, yes, dresses, you see that they do some beautiful embroidery around the neck area, all the way down to the chest, to the abdomen area. And you notice that these embroideries are beautifully done. And so the moment you take a glance at that outfit, those are the areas that will first of all pull you closer. Then you begin to scan around the rest of the areas of the garment. So emphasis is key and is very important. It all forms part of the attraction in the design. Let's go on to is also very, very important. So this is the art of depicting or presenting a particular element in a copy, large or more than the other supporting elements. So dominance is much more not the same as emphasis. In terms of dominance, it's looking at size or scale, how the projection of that particular area becomes bigger, and it's sort of a, you know, give a certain attention, because of, you see, recently people fashion, a lot of people are wearing this baggy boot cuts type of jeans and trousers, and you know, um, shorts and so on, that are extra, like extremely bigger than, I mean, the normal trouser size I will be wearing. And it is very interesting. You see, the largeness and all has also given it some kind of dominance in terms of whatever combination that you put on, looking at the outfit and so on. Okay, so dominance can also be in terms of, if you look at the vehicles that are coming, especially the type of Toyota vehicles, the V8s and so on. You see that the front grille, the way they use the silver to partition those grills, and the front of the vehicle is so bold and what do you call it, intimidating. Most of them are captured in terms of how um, one needs to, you know, make a design much more appealing. And when you see it, you kind of feel like it's a big truck, like it dominates your view. And it is funny because when you look at it, the elements that have been replicated is just lines, maybe horizontal lines that have been repeated severally to create the grille of the front of the vehicle. And the bumper is so big. Sometimes the lamps are very tiny. When I'm saying lamp, I mean the headlights. Some of them are not so big. They are small and cute, but they make the grille very big. So then the grille becomes more dominant to show some kind of authority, show some kind of intimidation. And people are attracted by that. Even the silver structure that have been sculpted in front of the car is very, very bold, like it makes you want to have such a car. So this is what we are talking about. In terms of design, these things are very, very important in order for you to make a design become more successful and more attractive. Yeah, so going forward, we have what we call balance. So this is the art of achieving equilibrium in an artwork. Okay, and this simply means that the artwork is neither top heavy or bottom heavy. So how do you now relate this so that the car or the design that you are doing wouldn't be also again boring? You see, when it's boring, that means the elements are not properly distributed and the work is very, very uninteresting. So in other words, the navigation or the negative space, the negative space at the left and right sides and top side and the bottom side of the design must appear optically equal so that weight of the design is not heavily concentrated on one side on the surface. So the word there, optically, in some cases, the balance could be in a form that could be represented in color. Some of them can be represented in shape, not necessarily weight, like having something that is heavy like a rock, but then just these elements alone, any of these elements alone can make it give an optical, you know, illusion of how this thing had been distributed in terms of weight. And balance can also be explained as the even distribution of elements in a design. So once you put maybe one shape here, you put another shape here. The other shape that you put there might not necessarily be the same shape as the other one. But the fact is, if you put a triangle shape on your left side and you put a circle shape on the right side, there is balance. It's not necessary that the shape here, which is the triangle, must be the same that have been repeated here. The reason is that there's something hanging this on this left side and there's something hanging on this right side. And so optically, when you look at it, you see that one side is not empty, the other side is occupied. So once you have one shape here and the other side is empty, that's where you find the issue of improper balance. But then once there's a shape here, it does not mean that the shape must be the same that has to be repeated here. It could be different shape, but it's a shape. But they are all occupying on both left and right side. But they show some kind of occupation in that area. And so it is balanced. I hope you are getting what I'm saying. So right now, if you are to repeat the same shape here, then it becomes monotonous. That's where it becomes boring, because you have put circle here and the circle here, and it makes your design quite boring. So in some cases, you want your design to have some kind of variety and so on. So you don't concentrate on one particular design. That's what we're talking about, the variety, where one particular shape will dominate, and at the end of the day, it is not interesting. Okay, so yeah, so basically that is balance. So this means that when composing the same or similar elements in a design, the elements should not be concentrated on one side of the design, but repeated on the flip side of the design, so that when the design is mirrored, the same or similar weight of the same or similar weights of the element can be seen at the flip side. So triangle here and circle here is same as similar weight, but it's just that the shape is different. So there isn't any issue with weight here. Okay, so in a situation where the element is repeated at the flip side, but it is too small, so that the other side extremely overshadows the other, or where it is not repeated at all, that is when there is nothing there, the design is said to be unbalanced. Okay, so two main types of balance are applied in two-dimensional arts. So when you are designing, these things need to come. Once you put something here on this side, you need to look for another thing to help, balance the other side. Okay, let's say, for instance, you have a painting on the wall, and on the painting, you have a tree on the left side on the painting. And on the other side of the painting, you could have maybe two boys or a boy walking maybe on the road on the other side, giving a certain something to occupy that space. Rather than you draw the tree, then the other side, that is, you draw the tree on the left side, and on the right side, you leave it bare, like a bare ground or a bare space. It makes it uninteresting to look at. And such work, people will look at it, all right, they will smile and pass. They won't tell you how much, or they won't ask you how much. Okay. So we have the symmetrical or the formal balance, then we have the informal balance. So with formal balance, the copy is arranged about a center line so that the sides will be physically equal. So let's take, for instance, our own human body. If you put a straight line that will split our body into two parts, that is vertically, from the forehead on top of the nose, through the middle of the lips, middle of the chin, middle of the neckline, middle of the chest line, middle of our tummy, all the way down. You see that when you split the body into two halves, whatever that you find here, the eye, the ear, the side of the lips, the side of the nose, will be the same with our hands on this side. The same thing will be mirrored here. So it is symmetrical. When we say symmetrical, the two halves in terms of the physical appearance are of the same equality. Then in the informal, This is the art of arranging a copy in a work of art so that the space at the top, bottom, or side are not physically equal, but they appear optically. So here we are dealing with the eye, how the eye views this informal, what do you call it, balance. It is said to be the most interesting in design. So I could have what do you call it, a jacket, okay, a jacket like a suit of whether female jacket or male jacket, like a suit jacket, and you put a straight line. You just lay it on your bed and you put a straight line to split the jacket into two halves. Now, the jacket is balanced because the other side here is the same as the other side. Let's say the jacket has two pockets, so you have two pockets. So one pocket goes to the other side, the other pocket goes to the other side. Now these two are balanced. At the moment, the jacket is splitted into two, but the other half is maybe is in red color. Okay, it's red. The other half is red, and the other half is of different color, maybe a lighter color, maybe white. Please, you understand? The other side of the jacket is maybe white. Now, red and white, which one is heavier? Obviously, it's red because red is much more vivid. It is a color that's, pierces in the eye. It's a color that is solid. White is seen as transparent. It's seen as a lighter and neutral color. So it doesn't have much weight. If you wear red, you look heavier than when you wear white. When you wear white, you become lighter. That's why they say victory. Whites represent victory. They represent, purity, where you are with all your abadi, what do you call it? Things that are struggles and all those things, where now you are victorious. You become lighter. People give birth and they wear white. People have their birthdays and they wear white, just celebrating the elements of purity and so on. So now, looking at balance, this one becomes informal balance because as much as possible, one color is overweighing the other color. But it's an optical, appearance in terms of how it is seen. But if you are looking at it in terms of form, it's the same jacket which pockets with hand or sleeve, the same thing here. Okay, but we are looking at it from the optical uh, um, angle where the color has more weight. The red color has more weight than the white color on the other side. I hope I've made this clear. So this is a simple example that will enable you to understand informal balance, which is much more of a physical, what do you call it? Which is more of an optical, illusion than the other one, which is the physical, which is the symmetrical, where everything is equal. One is not heavier than the other one. So these are the two different types of balance: the formal and the informal. The formal you could mention, you can use it, you can say symmetrical. Then informal, you can say asymmetrical. Asymmetrical. I didn't bring it there, but it is A. So instead of symmetrical, you have A with an A starting, asymmetrical. And so asymmetrical is where it is informal balance. Then symmetrical is when it is formal balance. Okay, let's move forward. So this is a typical image display of what we're talking about. So when you look at the surface of this drawing, you notice that the shapes have been grouped in a way that it has shifted from the layout surface of the paper, leaving that space there hanging and fluid. There is nothing happened there. But now, when you come to the other flip side of the image, you notice that this is a good balance because the elements in terms of shapes have been distributed and shared within the surface of the layout, so that the side and side will have a certain balance and the work itself will occupy within the space that is supposed to be. Now, the idea is that when you are looking at an artwork visually, you know, your eye is supposed to have a spot where the eye can as well relax or rest or breathe. Because if a work of art is busily or chaotically represented, it makes it boring. When you look at it, you get so disturbed and you want to walk away. Sometimes you just snap your eye on it, then you turn your face. It's not something that is interesting because it's too chaotic for you, and the colors, the lines, the shapes, everything is so awkward and it makes it not interesting to look at. So oftentimes when you see, that's why when you take photographs in studio portrait, you see that there's a background, they leave some little background here, there's some blue background or white background. Just they can't just pick the entire face to cover the entire surface of the image, of the surface. So it's always important to leave those balance. And even when they do that, they try to make sure that the side and side spaces that are moving around your head when you're taking the photograph, they try to balance it up so that the same amount of space here will be equal to the same amount of space on the right side and the left side. And the top side of your head, there will be some similar amount of space like that, in order for the picture to be very, very balanced and presentable and also interesting to look at. Very interesting area to look at. This type of principle is simply refers to the movement in the arrangement of these elements in an artwork. So rhythm is displayed by repeating a particular element continuously or serially in an artwork. For instance, the vine lets on the leaves have been arranged in a rhythmical style. Let me see what I can use as an example. Okay. You see, when you listen to the music notes, maybe in the hymn books that we use, like when you go to churches, as you are singing the hymns, you notice that you sing the stanza, then it gets a part where you're supposed to sing the chorus. And after that, you go to the next stanza. Then after that, you go to the chorus again. You see that there's this beautiful flow in terms of how the tune of the music and the notes, how it is written, and the way the stanza, the space between where you sing the chorus and the next chorus and the next chorus. You see that there is this amount of time that is, fixed in between, that you could see that it's of the same time frame. I don't know how to describe this. Okay, let's move forward. Maybe I will get an example again, then I'll use. Okay, so it is also another form of distinction between rhythm, repetition. You see, repetition is, you might think that repetition and rhythm, they are of the same, but repetition is quite different. Repetition can be in an ascending or diminishing form. Either something is represented from the biggest to the middle to the medium, then to the the tiniest form, which is repetition. But rhythm is like fixed in terms of form, in terms of spacing, in terms of shape, and so on. And color can be used, and as well as shape and other elements. Um, um, let's say with rhythm, a particular element is arranged continuously without any drop of the element in between. So if I'm to draw a circle on a surface, now the space which is in between that circle, okay, and I will calculate it, then draw the next circle. Now, after drawing the next circle, I'll have to calculate the same space or the gap that I gave to the first circle and repeat that same circle again. And when I repeat the circle must be of the same size in terms of scale, the same spacing in terms of gap. So it goes on and on and on. And in design, it's mostly used around certain areas that will enable us have some kind of movement. So rhythm creates a kind of movement that will help direct the eye to actually appreciate the design. Okay. Okay. So let's see if I have an example here. This is an example here now. So rhythmic circles. You notice that the circles have been of the same scale and they are fused together in terms of their line, the edges. There isn't any gap that indicates that they are apart. And if there should be a gap, the gap should be of the same equal spacing. That is basically what it means when you talk about rhythm. And this can be used in so many forms. So if you look at maybe some vehicles, you will see that there's some kind of repetition of a certain form in some parts of the car just to create that rhythm. And the same thing I mentioned with the music notes, the same thing, even the beats, how the beat goes. You see that the beat is one beat that have been made and have been repeated simultaneously, but in a form of rhythm. So it repeats. It's just one beat, conca. Then the conca has been repeated in a way that has been given a time frame. So the conca goes on, the conca, 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 but then they leave some frames in between, that is spacing, that will continue. Then the conca becomes something like a beat, and you play it and it consistently move on like that and becomes a beat. So that is how some of these things appear. These principles appear in most designs. And so clothing, for instance, rhythm is very important. You see the way you do the pleating, the pleats in a dress, how the pleat is folded, and the other one, and the other one, and the other one, and it's continuous like that. And they're of the same width in terms of spacing, in terms of how it is being repeated. That is rhythm. It goes on and it continues, and it gives a beautiful, representation in a design. Okay, I'm hoping that that one has been captured. So repetition. Repetition here is not the same as rhythm. So it might seem kind of similar, but it's not. One way or the other, you see the difference. So this is the art of distributing a particular element in different parts of any artwork, in different parts. Rhythm is a continuation, and it goes by size and spacing. Okay. Repetition is more like you are putting it here, then you repeat it there without considering the spacing or the size in some occasions. So the elements mostly repeated are lines, oftentimes, colors, shapes, etc. One importance of repetition in a composition is to minimize exaggeration in terms of the number of different elements. Okay, applied in an artwork. Good repetition also enhances the beauty of an artwork. So if you bring repetition, it minimize the exaggeration. That is, you see, when you put together a design and you kind of position one shape somewhere on the design and you leave it like that, and you try to, you know, exaggerate by means of expanding it, it becomes boring. But then, almost like the way we discussed the variety, but variety is not necessarily repeating the same shape. But in terms of repetition, the same form, the same color, the same what do you call it, lines can be repeated here, there, but without considering the spacing or the shape. That's why I mentioned that sometimes the repetition can be in the form of an ascending order or descending order. When you look at some of our fashion designs, you notice that maybe one side of the chest area, let's say the kaftan, they will just do some round, they'll cut out maybe round a fabric round and patch it. Then they'll cut the same fabric, maybe another round one, but maybe smaller version of it and patch it. Then maybe we'll go further and cut another round one, maybe a much more smaller version of it and patch it. Then you see it having like bigger, biggest, or smaller, smallest, whatever it is. But then it is either done in an ascending way or descending way. It's also another form of repetition, and it gives a certain, interesting appearance in an artwork. So basically, yes, that is what repetition is. And so this is an image example showing the two circles, and you can see how it's distributed. Unlike the rhythm one, this one, they can be of different location, but then the same circle has been repeated in the design. Okay. So proportion. Again, when we talk about proportion, you might also be confused with the balance. But again, they are not the same. So when we are talking about, you take notes. So this refers to the relative difference in the size or scale of objects or shapes used in a composition. The other one, in terms of balance, it wasn't talking about the size or scale, but here it's talking about the size or scale of an object used in a composition. Okay, proportion always also compares the ratio of the size of the positive and negative space in a composition. In other words, when composing images or shapes on a surface, the objects must fit well into the surface so that the ratio of the size of the negative and positive space will balance. It therefore means that in composition, the drawing or objects must not appear too large or too small in the space, and bigger objects or shapes must not extremely overshadow smaller ones. So, like I said, when you are cooking a pot of soup, you have the right to determine how to measure salt, the amount of salt that will go into the soup. If it's a very big pot of soup that is meant for 300 people, obviously you can't just take 1 tablespoon of salt and put into it. If it's a small pot of soup again, and it's meant for maybe 3 people or 4 people. Obviously, again, you can't put a whole tablespoon of salt into, because full tablespoon of salt might even damage the entire soup. So this is where you determine how these elements are properly managed so that they augur well when you are preparing a design or when you are producing a design. Yeah, so this is an example of the proportion that we're talking about. So we have the bad proportion, we have the good proportion. Now, by observing this, you notice that the work has been extremely been, overemphasized to the extent that it has overshadowed the entire space within the surface um, of the square or the triangle, right, the rectangle shape. And with this, you notice that the work becomes too crowded and too intimidating in terms of form. Now, looking at the other one, which is image 2, it's also termed as bad proportion because it has been pushed far away to the background and leaving so much space that could be used for something bare. So that again is not good proportion, because when you view it, it's not interesting. Imagine you are taking a passport photograph, and within the passport photograph surface, your image has been pushed far away, and you have the entire passport photograph, but your face is so tiny and far away on the passport photograph. That is not a good photography. And if you take a passport photograph for the first image that I'm talking about, which is the very first bad proportion, again, your face cannot come all the way to the extent that it swallows the entire surface of the passport photograph, which is not cool. Now, with the final one, which is the good proportion, you notice that everything has been, evenly distributed, and it is properly, you know, positioned so that the eye can be fixed at one point, and it can also lay itself on another point where it can rest and breathe, then come back to the surface again. So this is a very good representation of proportion, where it had been the space or the surface of the paper that it's being worked on had been distributed evenly, and it is interesting to look at. So contrast or opposite. When you say contrast,
Please,
yes, sir. Yes, sir, I'm listening.
please, can you go back to the previous slide?
The previous
That's
one.
the, yes, the good proportion and the bad proportion.
Okay, okay, all right. This one, eh?
Yes, please.
Okay. You want
Please,
to see it, right?
no, I want to
Mm-hmm.
ask a question.
Okay.
Looking at the good proportion,
Mm-hmm.
now assuming the shape, that's the square or the circle,
Yes,
it
sir.
touches the edge of the space. Do we call
Okay.
it a good proportion, or it is also a bad proportion? Looking at the bad one, you see that one, the shape has exceeded the space.
Yes, swallowing
So
it.
the good one, so assuming it doesn't exceed, it's
It goes
it
closer, but it
stands
doesn't.
at, yes, just at the point of the space. So do we call
Okay.
it a good proportion, or it's also a bad proportion?
It's still a bad proportion in the sense that in design, you don't occupy the entire surface of the work. That will make the viewer unable to breathe. You see, when the work becomes so widened on the surface, it's like it is overshadowing, it's overshadowing the space. As a work in a shell, so the work is, trying to dominate itself on you. And people wouldn't want to be attracted, or people are not attracted to such works. They want works that when they see, the work can, or rather will calm them. It will pull them, it will calm them down. Because in design or in art's supposed to be therapeutic. It's supposed to, you know, pull the person together and give some amount of healing. Not healing as in healing, but you see, it's a psychological thing that I'm trying to describe here. And so, if looking at the very first bad proportion, looking at it, it is uninteresting. It's already over imposing itself. It's not something that you want to associate with, because it's rather, when you're looking at it, it's troubling in terms of psychological, you know, inferences. It's a bit troubling when you look at it. But when you look at the middle one, which is the bad proportion, it's also a bit, you know, troubling again, because it's too far away. Do you have to squeeze your eyes, or do you have to come so close? Do you have to get a spectacle to look at it? Yeah, is but with this one, you stand and you are at ease. That is where we say good proportion. You can observe it yourself. That's why people go to museums, galleries. You see them, they stand in front of a painting, and they can stand there for a very long time. They will refuse to go to the other painting that is hung on the wall, because that one does not attract them. Probably because there are some missing elements that are not there, that are supposed to make the person, you know, feel at ease when they are looking at it. So you see someone who will stand before an artwork and wouldn't want to move. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, please.
Okay. So
Please,
should we
I
move?
have another question.
Okay. Okay.
When you were talking about the balance, I raised my hand, but since
Okay.
you
Sorry.
noticed that.
I've shifted my screen to the slide, so I don't really see the screen.
Okay.
Yes,
When
that's
you were
right.
talking
So,
about the
mhm,
balance,
mhm.
I keep on hearing copy, copy, copy. So when we say copying an artwork, what does it mean?
Copy.
Yes, please.
When I was saying balance.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay. This is balance, right? And you're talking
The
about
types, the types, the types.
here.
Yes, please.
That is symmetrical and the asymmetrical balance.
Yes,
Okay, the
please.
copy. Okay. You say this is the art of arranging a copy in a work of art, so that the space at the top, bottom, or sides are not physically equal, but they appear optically equal. It is said to be the most interesting in design. Now, the copy here, we're talking about when you try to strike a line to see this side. You see, okay, let me put it this way. The first one, which is the symmetrical or the formal balance, we are looking at a situation whereby there's a medial line that is supposed to split maybe our human body into two halves from a vertical drawing of a line, where whatever that is on the left side, or in terms of weight, in terms of form, is the same that is repeated on the other side into two halves. So that's what we're making up. That's why we mentioned copy. Please, do you understand? The copy is arranged about a center line so that the sides will be physically equal. So copy, like a more or less like a mirror, a repetition of the two sides being equal. Then moving forward, the copy that is repeated in the informal, we are looking at copy again, but then it is not copy where it is physically seen as the same, but it's a copy where it is optically seen as the same. Where it is optically, when you say optically, it is your eye that will judge the balance. But in terms of this other balance, we are looking at in terms of the form, the representation of the shape, okay, and sometimes the element, the things that are established in that place. Like, for instance, if you split my body into two, the things that you see in this side, you see one eye, one ear, a half side of the nose, half side of the lips, one full arm, one full leg, portion of my chest, portion of my tummy. Okay, those are the things that we're looking at. There's a copy of those things repeated in the other side of the half that is here. I hope you're getting it. Now, when it comes to this other one, informal balance, it also deals with copy, all right. But here, the copy is not the same, but there's a copy. Now, that's why I use the jacket. If it is a jacket that you split into two vertically, this side will have the same thing that is here, the same thing. If it's one pocket here, there's a one pocket here. The other side to have another pocket. If there's a sleeve here, the other one to have a sleeve. But a situation where that same jacket that you have splitted, one side is color red, then the other side is color white. And we are saying that when you look at the color, these two colors, from a visual point, not in terms of physical points where you hold or you touch, from a visual point, you notice that red constitute more weight than what? White. White is transparent. And I even went ahead to mention purity and so on, and why people wear white. People become lighter. Like, let's look at the politicians, for instance. When they win their election, all of them wear white. Because, Charlie, the struggles and all that, all the election, campaign, everything, it was a lot of weight on them. Now the weight has been lifted. So the color white is worn to depict, say, victory. All the hard work has paid off. Now we have become more free, we have become more lighter in terms of all the struggles. So we have emerged as victorians. So I'm looking at it like white is light from the optical appearance, and red is heavy. So here we say informal balance. So therefore, informal balance deals with optical illusion of the eye. Then the formal one deals with the physical equality. So the copy is the replication of these forms, indicating that the two are of two different copies in terms of when you split it into two, especially when you're looking at the informal balance. They are of the same jacket that you have splitted into two. But when you look at the copies, they are of the same copy. But when you look at the symmetrical balance, they are the same. What is here is here. But in terms of informal balance, as much as they are the same, it's the same jacket that has been splitted into two. It's still not balanced because when you look at it from the optical point of view, this side is red, this side is white. And obviously, one side is much more weight than the other side. Senior, just speak. Just feel free to explain. If you are not getting it, I can still look for a form.
I'm okay.
Have you gotten it? So
Yes,
one
please.
is more of an optical vision. And the same thing, items that we see, cars and so on. You could see that a television that is in your room might have a certain flat representation. Oh, this TV is very flat. Is this, is that? It's for you to use your eyes to see, right? Now, let's look at the back of the TV. No matter what, as much as it's flat, you will see that the entire back is flat. But when you are going towards the lower side of the back, you see that that side is bulky. Okay, it's bulky because that's where it houses all the pen drive and all those things, the HDMI and other things. You understand? So in all, optically, there's some kind of balance there where some portion, a larger portion has been left and a smaller portion has been used. I don't know how to describe this anymore.
Yes,
Let's
it's
move
okay.
forward.
Well,
Okay. All right. So where were we before we went back? We're at this side. Okay, so this side is clear right now, right? So we can move on to the next one, which is the contrast and opposition. So contrast and opposition is like when we say opposition, like where it is not contrast. This is a complete difference between the various elements used in an artwork. The application of contrast creates variety in artwork, helps to prevent monotony and boredom. So, for instance, you wear black and white. That's a clear contrast, black, white, or a color that is more of warm color. Then we have the cool color, colors that are close to the sun and colors that are close to the sea. Sea colors are more of cool colors, then colors that are very close to the sun are more of the hot colors. And so we are talking about hot colors like red, orange, purple, um, wine, and all those colors. Those are colors. Even if you look at the sunset and the sunrise, you see the color schemes, the kind of colors are around the sun, the yellow and the rest. And when you look at the colors that are on the sea, or the sky colors like the blue, the green, the turquoise, and the rest, those are the cool colors. Now, if you pick a color from there, from the cool, and you pick a color from the hot, and you fuse them together, maybe you wear jeans, a blue jeans, and a red t-shirt. That is contrast. They are not colors that are of the same relation. Okay, one belongs to a hot environment, the other one belongs to a cool environment, and you have kind of combined them together. So there will be an absolute contrast between the two. And so that's what we are talking about in the use of elements. Usually there is a step of contrast that is, also makes your work interesting, depending on the design and what the artist intend to, prove or justify or achieve. And so contrast also is very interesting in design. It's very interesting. So let's see. If there's contrast, it doesn't make the work boring. It makes it more fun. It makes it more interesting. Rather than all the time, everything is of the same relationship in terms of form, in terms of lines, in terms of color, and so on. So contrast also creates some kind of, interesting variety, like a little bit of this and a little bit of that fused together. But they are of no relationship, but then they are fused together. So if we go to the idea of harmony, where I said the table with a teacup and sugar and everything, okay, obviously we said all those things are harmonious because they're all related to one kind of thing. But in terms of contrast, they are not the same. There's contrast there because the spoon is made up of metal. The bread is made up of flour. The two are not related. There's a contrast there. But a situation where you have cake, you have bread, you have meat pie, you have this. There's some kind of linkage because they are all baked food, and they all have almost the same type of ingredients that are being used. Okay, so here they are of the same, they are more of direct relationship. So the contrast has to do with shape, form, color, and so on, texture, and all. They're all coming into contrast. The surface is smooth here, and it is rough here. That's contrast. One part of this is smooth, one part of this is rough. That's contrast. Okay, so in terms of texture, yes. In terms of color, where the two colors are of different background, in terms of how they relate based on their warmth and the cool, is also another form of contrast. And the contrast again, in terms of shape, maybe this is a shape that belongs to the round family circle, is contrast with um, circle will contrast with square, because square is known to be straight edge line. But if we are looking at square, um, um, triangle, rectangle, and the rest, those are more or less like the straight and angular edges in terms of form. But when you go to the curvy areas like the hemisphere and the rest, the oval shape and so on, those are more of the same category. So contrast is more or less like where there's a disparity, two things from different areas that have been put together. So when we say there's a contrast of maybe two ethnic groups, somebody is from maybe the northern region and somebody is from maybe the Volta region, or somebody is from the Ashanti region and somebody is from the um, um, name it, the French or something. These are two different people from different backgrounds. They speak different language and they are different this thing. But when you have someone from France and someone from maybe I don't know which other French speaking country in Europe. Um, um, I don't know. Let's look at. Um, I'm looking at maybe somebody from Africa here who is from maybe Ivory Coast. Both of them they speak French. They will relate more. There will be a blend more. Um, when I speak, she will understand, and when she speak, I will understand. We might have almost the same kind of, you know, um, behavior in terms of how we perceive things, the kind of food that we eat and everything. Maybe it might be a bit similar, but where the person is a French and the other person is a Chinese, Chinese, their language alone and the French alone, they are far apart. That's where the contrast is, and the food they eat is different. And even their language, when you're writing it on the surface, the way the person will write French and the way the person will write the Chinese language, they are nowhere close. It's different. The symbols and this one having their own type of symbols and this one having their own type of symbols. It's different. So the contrast is so sharp here. And the same thing we are saying that is applicable in design. Sometimes you could hear a Chinese person singing and maybe it's featured by a French person. It will be very interesting to listen to such a song. Yeah, of course, because of the contrast. The tonation of the French person and the tonation of the Chinese person, uh, it's interesting. I've heard a Chinese person singing this Afro music, and the way they sing it, you laugh, but it's fun. The contrast is so clear and it's bare. Okay, so let's move on to unity. So
Yes, sir.
unity, yes, sir. I'm
Yes, sir.
listening.
Does brightness have effect on contrast?
Does what?
Brightness
Brightness.
have effect on contrast?
When you say brightness, you have not related to anything. Is it brightness in terms of color or what?
Yes, please.
Okay, fine. If let's take for instance, I'm wearing white. Sorry, I'm wearing red. Okay, and I'm wearing red top and I'm wearing red down. And the red top is very bright or is brighter than the red that I'm wearing down. Is that not what you're trying to say?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, once the red I'm wearing at the top is far brighter than the red that I'm wearing down, it is not contrast, it is harmony. They are still related because they are from the same red, background as a hue, as a color. Okay. But a situation where you have blue and red, blue, there's no red in blue and there's no blue in red. So they are contrasting colors. But where you wear red and another red, but the first red on top is far brighter than the lower red, the one down, they are still red. and it is still not contrast. It is known as harmony. Please, is it clear now?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So unity. So this one is a synergy achieved in a design as a result of proper application and linkages of all relevant elements and principles of design. So where now you are done with the design, where everything is now linked to each other. All the elements have been properly distributed. Let me say, when you are done with the pot of soup, when everything, the pepper and everything has been put into it and it's now boiling, and it has boiled to a certain temperature and you are done, and now you want to serve it. Serving it and tasting it, you realize that the amount of salt, pepper, and everything were all on point. That's what we mean by unity. So, in terms of design, where everything has been put together overall, all of its elements, principles, all of them have come together, and it is as expected, as achieved, as it is desired. At the end of the day, for it to be a good design, a presentable design, that is what we mean by unity, when all of it comes together. So in other words, the maximum cohesion that is created between all the elements and principles applied in a design. The painting below demonstrates how unity can be achieved in a composition. Students are entreated to use it as an aid to appreciate and identify how elements of the design have been composed based on their principles to achieve unity in the work. So it is the cohesion of everything, from line to even how rhythm has been, represented, how balance has been represented, everything has been represented in a more, fluid. They are all blended in, and at the end of the day, a beautiful design has been put out. It could be a garment style, it could be a shoe design, it could be a vehicle, it could be anything that you find in your home. Even sometimes too, even when you are using it, how do you fit in it? How comfortable it is also confirms the unity that we are looking at. If you wear the shoe and the inside of the shoe is very soft, when you walk with it, it is light in weight. When you move with it, your toes doesn't hurt. It tells you that everything was done right. And that's what we mean by unity. Unity. So patterns.
Please,
You want to say something?
someone's hand is up.
Okay. Oh, you should go ahead, Mr. Rich. My screen, I've shifted it to what do you call it, the slide. So I don't really see what's happening. So once you raise your hand, you can speak. Feel free. Okay, so I'm listening.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. I'm listening, sir.
Sir, please, with these principles, so must we necessarily see all of them in one design? Like if you are making one design, we need to, show all these principles before you get a
Okay.
perfect design.
Okay. Absolutely not. There are some designs that you put together and a lot of these elements might not be needed. That's why I was using the pot of soup. I mean, if you are cooking a pot of soup, it's not everything that you may have to put into it because you want to achieve a good taste. Oftentimes, when you put almost everything that you think, okay, then we will say that when you are cooking a pot of soup, add sugar, add certain things that you find in your kitchen, add everything, you might have a disaster. The soup will taste awful. So what I'm trying to say is that depending on what you are doing and what is required, what kind of elements do you need? Now, the use of those selected elements that you need for that particular design and how you've been able to distribute it and cohesively is what we are talking about. So it might not necessarily mean everything must be present, but depending on the type of design, most of the elements of the principles or the principles must, must coalesce into one and each other so that you get a successful design. But it's not always the case that. But funny enough, too, when you look at the design and you examine it critically, you could find and locate how each of these elements have been distributed on the surface of your design. Balance wise, you will find it there. Rhythm wise, you might find it there. What do you call it? Proportion, you might find it there in terms of the principles. Then what I'm saying proportion and the rest is that how you've been able to distribute shape, color, line, and so on, texture, and so on, will all be in the work. There are some occasions where maybe the work might not have texture. It's not a work that you might need a higher amount of texture. When I say texture, it doesn't mean it has to be rough before you call it texture.